16th May 2013, one of the darkest days in the Indian Premier League as well as Indian cricket. The Delhi police walked into three different hotels in Mumbai, arresting a lot of bookies and three Rajasthan Royals players. The players as we know it were Ajit Chandila, S. Srishant and Ankit Chavan. The night before had witnessed a match between the Mumbai Indians and the Rajasthan Royals that the Mumbai Indians had ended up winning quite comfortably in fact. What was interesting is that only Ankit Chavan out of the three arrested players was the one featuring in the game that night. Now the reason for the arrest is pretty well known and I'm sure you would have clicked on this video already knowing a little bit about what had transpired in those couple of months. But what was the actual story, what had transpired before that and the couple of years after that in the IPL will go down as some of the darkest periods in the history of Indian cricket. This is the story of IPL's fixing scandal and the ban on the two franchisees, Rajasthan Royals and the Chennai Super Kings. Now before we get into the story itself, definitely hit that subscribe button. Now, ever since its inception, the IPL has always been in the limelight in Indian cricket. The IPL always had the right ingredients to be the perfect cocktail, but it could go either way. It could be extremely good or it could be extremely bad. And since 2008, there had been a few controversies as well, but nothing of the scale of what was about to go down in 2013. And the fact of the matter is, because of how popular and lucrative IPL had become by the year 2012, it was no surprise that bookies and betting was definitely on in this league. In fact, the betting was so rampant that it was much more in a league like the IPL as compared to even something as big as international cricket. But even before understanding the magnitude of a scandal like this, it is important to establish some context on where Indian cricket was at the moment. The last time that India had been rocked by something like a match-fixing scandal was in 2000, where the names of Kapil Dev, Ajay Jadeja and so many of the others were thrown into the limelight. However, since then, the BCCI had taken such strict action that no one in the Indian cricket circuit ever even mentioned the word fixing. From there, India continued to rise through the 2000s to become one of the powerhouses of cricket in the world. They went on to win the 2007 T20 World Cup and the 2011 50 Over World Cup after 28 years. And in general, this was a time where Indian cricket was flourishing to the best of its potential. But from here, we cut to 2012. 1 year before the main scandal happened in the year 2013, a sting operation was conducted by India TV and 5 domestic players were found to have conducted spot fixing in the IPL. In fact, in one of the conversations that was had, the player even went on to say that for bowling just one no ball in a match, they were offering him 10 lakhs. By this time, both the Delhi and Mumbai police had a faint idea that something like betting was definitely on in the IPL. They in fact had produced a charge sheet with 42 names that they would be phone tapping their conversations under the Maharashtra Control of Crime or the MCOCA Act. What's interesting is they found links to the underworld, and these underworld people had connections with bookies as well as some cricketers in the IPL. In particular, two names stood out for bookies who were caught. One was Kiran Dhole and one was Sunil Bhatia. Both of these people were connected to Ajit Chandila, and both of these were connected to Jiju Janardhan, who in fact was a friend of the cricketer S. Srishant. Now, through their phone tapping conversations, the Delhi police had found out that there might be a good chance that there would be spot fixing in IPL of 2013. However, just the phone tapping conversations weren't enough evidence for them to be able to go and make these arrests, and so they had to wait for these events to pan out in the IPL of 2013. And it was exactly as the police forces had predicted. As soon as the IPL of 2013 started, the phone tapping conversations revealed a lot of key phrases, things like wristbands and hand towels being mentioned, something that we know that eventually went on to serve as evidence against these players. And this was also around the same time that the Mumbai police was notified of how a Pakistani number was being called from India many times. They went on to investigate this number and found out that this number belonged to none other than ICC umpire Asad Rauf. But for now, we leave the Asad Rauf story aside. Let's come back to the IPL. It's the May of 2013 and the IPL has moved towards its business end. And here's where we get into the 3 matches and the 3 events, specifically the 3 players that were involved in the spot fixing scandal. Now, the first game was Pune Warriors taking on the Rajasthan Royals in Jaipur on 5th May 2013. In this game, Ajit Chandila had agreed to give 14 runs or more in the second over of his spell. Now, one thing here to note is that when a player is about to commit a spot fixing offense, the bookies often tell them to start their over a little later by using some kind of signal or by taking their time doing stretches or whatever it is, so the bookies get time to be able to place their bets. Now, the difference between spot fixing and match fixing is as follows. Spot fixing basically involves fixing on the spot. It could be related to just one ball or one over, whereas match fixing refers to the fixing of the entire match, and it is something that is generally a lot tougher and requires the majority players on both sides to be involved. Now, while Ajit Chandila did in fact give 14 runs in that second over of his spell, he had forgotten something very crucial, and that was to have some sort of signal that would let the bookies know that he's in fact going to be partaking in this act. And what this led to after the match over phone tapping conversations was found out to be is that Ajit Chandila was given a lot of threats because of the fact that he did not signal to the bookies, and he was asked to pay some amount of money upfront to these bookies. From here we move to the second game that happened in Mohali, Rajasthan Royals taking on the Kings 11 Punjab on 9th May 2013. This time it was Srishant's turn. It was decided that Srishant would not use a towel on the side of his waist in the first over, but when he would come on to ball in the second over and if he was to partake in the spot fixing, he would be using a towel that he would wear on his waist, and he also went on to do some stretches and warm up before starting his over in order to give time to the bookies to place their bets. Srishant went on to give 13 runs in that over. From here we move to the third and final match that happened in Bombay on 15th May 2013 as the Mumbai Indians took on the Rajasthan Royals. Now call it coincidence or not, but in this game Rahul Dravid had decided to drop both S. Srishant as well as Ajit Chandila. Now it is definitely not known whether or not Rahul Dravid already had some idea that something was going wrong or what the situation was. But this meant that in that third match neither Srishant nor Ajit Chandila would be able to partake in spot fixing. What Ajit Chandila did, however, was motivate Ankit Chavan to go on and take 60 lakhs in order to conduct spot fixing in that game. Ankit Chavan as well was asked to give 13 or more runs in the second spell of his over by the bookies. He went on to give just 2 runs in his first over, but in that second over he went for 6, 2 and 6 and eventually ended his second over going for 15 runs. Of course, these words aren't mine. This was the official press release by the Delhi police at the time. And allegedly, this is how the sequence of events unfold. And at the time, this was evidence enough for the Delhi police to be able to go and complete these arrests of these 3 cricketers after that game that happened on 15th May. Of course, they did arrest the bookies as well as the 3 cricketers, but when they went to arrest S. Srishant from his friend's residence, they found Jiju Janardhan, who was a bookie at the time, sitting with S. Srishant. They also found some expensive gifts at that residence itself. Now, this was a huge deal for Indian cricket, right? For a country that had not heard about match fixing for the last 13 years and for all of the celebration that the IPL was, players and fans were now starting to wonder if all of it was just staged, if the IPL was just one big hoax. Time progressed and of course the investigations continued as well. In fact, in September 2013, the BCCI also issued a lifetime ban on all 3 of these cricketers. But something else also happened during this period, and this is that the Mumbai police could not believe that they had not been able to track this down and that it took the Delhi police to come to Mumbai and find this spot fixing. And it's also no coincidence that at the time the Mumbai police had received reports for repeated calls going from India to Pakistan to Asad Rao's number. They thought that he surely had some kind of link or connection to this case, and so they continued investigating it. And what they'd find is that the 3 players who were arrested were just the tip of the iceberg. They found out through Asad Rao's phone tapping that he was actually in conversations with an Indian actor by the name of Bindu Dara Singh. On 21st May 2013, just 5 days after the arrest of all these 3 cricketers, the Mumbai police went ahead and arrested Bindu Dara Singh for betting charges. And we haven't even gotten to the real shocker yet. From here, the police interrogated Bindu Dara Singh and they found out that he has connections to Gurunath Mayappan, who was the then CSK team principal as well as the son-in-law of BCCI president N. Srinivasan. Mayappan in fact even tried escaping the police and was on the run for 3 days before being caught on 24th May 2013. He went on to admit that he had been a part of betting in the IPL since all the way back in 2011. And now this had opened a whole new can of worms. Just think about the situation of the players and the franchisees involved. Now nobody was sure as to how many people were guilty in the IPL and how big this scandal really was. This of course meant that because the Rajasthan Royals players were arrested and because someone had links in CSK, that these 2 franchisees had come under great scrutiny. The owners of these 2 franchisees were also summoned. In fact, a committee was set up by the BCCI, but funnily enough, it was headed by N. Srinivasan itself. This working committee found Raj Kundra, the Rajasthan Royals owner, and Gurunath Mayappan, the CSK team principal, to be not guilty. But it was very clear that this was some kind of conflict of interest simply because of the fact that N. Srinivasan's son-in-law, Gurunath Mayappan, was also involved. Now, what this also did in return was create some kind of doubt in the minds of everyone involved in the judiciary as to whether or not there was mismanagement in the BCCI itself. Eventually, there were also investigations conducted on the BCCI and the N. Srinivasan committee, and it was found that there was mismanagement in the BCCI at the time, and this forced a lot of the officials, including Rajiv Shukla, who was the treasurer at the time, to resign from the BCCI. There were some conditions, of course. At the time, the BCCI was still under N. Srinivasan, and he was given a clean sheet by the court to be able to partake in BCCI's activities as long as he stayed away from the IPL. And from here on, it was a long cycle in the Indian judiciary system, all the way up till 2014-2015, where the players were given repeated bails, there were questions raised on the officials, committees were formed, and in general, the parties involved were trying to either defend themselves or to try and find evidence against the players accused. One key highlight here is that the Mudgal committee was formed in 2014 to find whether or not these players were actually guilty. The Mudgal committee basically went on to say in their report that the investigative agencies lacked the tools and the technical infrastructure to be able to track down the evidences required to be able to book these players. Phone tapping alone was not an evidence enough to be able to get these players behind bars. Not only that, but they also made a very interesting suggestion, and that was to legalize betting itself in India to be able to reduce these events or at least have them under some sort of control. Not only that, the Mudgal committee also eventually went on to clear the names of all of these 3 players who were accused of spot fixing. In Jan 2015, the famous Lodha committee was also established to further continue investigation into the franchisees themselves. And by July 2015, it was decided that both the franchisees, Chennai Super Kings as well as the Rajasthan Royals, will be banned from the IPLs of 2016 and 2017 for a period of 2 years. This was also the time when all of the charges were finally dropped against all of these cricketers, citing lack of proper concrete evidences under the MCOCA Act. Now, of course, this is just an overview of all the events that happened. There are so many finer details, so many nitty-gritties, and so many reports that had come up over those 2 years and also leading up to the IPL of 2013 itself. How much of it was made public might even just be a percentage of what actually transpired in all of these events. What we do know, however, is that cricket as a sport is something that has been plagued by match fixing time and time again. And it does nothing but hurt the game when these kind of events take place. There are stronger anti-corruption practices, especially in the IPL and simply at a franchise level itself. However, this dark spot will always continue to exist on the brightness of the IPL. This has been a video on the IPL fixing scandal and how the events transpired over the couple of years. If you like this video, definitely leave in your thoughts in the comment section below, like, share this video with your friends, and definitely hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. All of our links are in the description. Definitely give us a follow on Instagram, follow us on our WhatsApp channels, we're extremely active there. We also have an email newsletter, so subscribe to that. And we will also be going live every Sunday at 11 AM to cover the IPL. That's all from me.